Hi everyone, welcome to this speech and language therapy training for teaching assistants, session 3. My name is Emma Bamford, hopefully you all know me. I'm a speech and language therapist working in the Harmony Trust. So this session is part of our whole group of training events. So if this is the first time you're accessing this session, which is session 3, you should actually already have completed session 1 and 2. So please stop watching this recording now and go and find those sessions. Watch those before you carry on with session 3. You might also be here for a refresher, so to watch the training session again. If that's the case, then fantastic. Don't worry, you don't need to watch sessions 1 and 2 again, unless you want to. So today we're going to focus on how we can change our language to support a child understand what we are saying and to learn new words. And we're also going to think about how we can encourage the child to use more expressive language. So to get us started, let's have a think about what linguistic demands we are placing on children. So in other words, what words are you using to ask them to do something? So we think about routine instructions. These often don't place much of a demand on the child. This is because they are repeated frequently, and children can often copy the actions of others. Therefore, they are not actually having to listen to and understand the instruction. And we, as the adult, are also not seeing them struggle to follow the instruction. So we don't actually know that the child isn't understanding the language. So for example, I often get told that the child can follow the instruction, come and sit on the carpet, bring your pen and your whiteboard. Or they can follow the instruction, get your coat and bag and line up at the door. But if these instructions are asked every day, the child will simply be able to use the clues around them to fulfill this request, rather than having to listen to the words. If you remember in an earlier session, we spoke about non-verbal communication and how this can also give clues as to what we are asking others to do. When we are helping children to understand what we are asking them to do, it's okay to use routine, contextual clues, non-verbal communication and other supports to support the child to understand what's being asked of them. However, when we're actively trying to teach children to understand what we're asking of them, we have to be more aware of the words or the language that we say and the clues that we give. So, the instruction, come and sit on the carpet, bring your pen and whiteboard. It may use 12 words. However, the child will probably understand this more readily than a shorter instruction, such as, Tom, bring me a red pen. This is because the first instruction is routine-based, whereas the second instruction, Tom, bring me a red pen, yes, it may only contain 6 words, but unlike the first instruction, it's directed only at Tom. Therefore, Tom can't copy anybody else. He can't look around his environment for clues. It's also an instruction which is out of routine, and so Tom has to understand more of the words than the situation. This request, while it may only contain 6 words and not 12 words, is of a higher linguistic demand. And so Tom will have to work harder to understand, follow, and answer the instruction. It's important that when we talk to our children, we are thinking about the words we use and the linguistic demands that these are placing on them. So we are now going to think about a technique which enables us to control the demands we place on a child in a very structured way. This technique allows the child to both develop their receptive language, so their understanding of what is happening, as well as their expressive language, which is their ability to use language, words, sentences effectively, and also to develop their vocabulary. You might have heard of a programme called the Derbyshire Language Scheme. If not, don't worry. We are going to talk about what they recommend now, and it's all to do with information carrying words. So let's pretend we have a child who's been playing with a doll and associated toys. So you might be thinking of a bed, a chair, pretend food, and clothes to dress the dolly up in. So the child understands the game in the context, i.e., the child can put the doll on the bed, the doll can sit on the chair, we can dress them up, and we can feed them. So if we take away all of the toys, leaving only the doll and the bed, and say, put the doll on the bed, given that the child understands these toys, has experience of them, and has played successfully with them, and there is nothing else that the child can now do with the dolly and the bed, how many words do you think that the child had to understand in order to complete the action, put the doll on the bed? When we're thinking about information carrying words in this context, the answer would be none. The child doesn't have to understand any words, as he can understand the situation, and there is not much else he can do with the doll and the bed. So the instruction can be classed as having no information carrying words. Remember the example, come and sit on the carpet, bring your pen and whiteboard? The child didn't need to understand the words as he could understand the situation. It's the same with this example. As a side note, for a child who, in this context, with these objects and with this instruction given, if the child can't complete this instruction, you would need to step back and think about the child's overall level of development. Think about their attention and listening skills, think about their vocabulary. You can recap these in our previous sessions, but also think about whether the child's learning any additional languages, and so do they have difficulties in their home language, which is going to impact on their ability with the English language. So now, moving up from no information carrying words. So obviously on the slide you have a picture here of a doll, a bed and a chair. If we were doing this session in real life, I would have the objects in front of me, so please try and imagine that these pictures are objects. So now, in front of the child, and with you sat with the child also, we're going to show the child a doll, a bed and a chair. And we're going to ask the same question. Put the doll on the bed. So now with these three items in front of them and hearing that sentence, how many words did the child have to understand? So here, one word carries essential information for the child to understand the instruction. That word is bed. So this is a one information carrying word instruction. So if we go back to look at the objects that we would have in front of our child, we have a doll, a bed and a chair. We know the child has experience of playing with a doll and a bed and a chair. The child knows how to use them and what is expected. So the child will know that the doll can be on the bed, or can be on the chair in typical play. So in order to understand the instruction, put the doll on the bed, all the child has to do is make a choice between bed and chair. So they have to be able to understand that word bed. That is the key information carrying word in this instruction. You can see on your PowerPoint I've underlined the word bed just to highlight that that is our key word. So now we've got 4 objects. We've got a doll, a teddy, a bed and a chair. And we're going to ask the same question. Put the doll on the bed. So now with the 4 items in front of them and hearing that sentence, how many words do we think the child had to understand? There are now 2 choices. The child has to choose between the doll or the teddy. Put the doll on the bed. So hopefully they'll choose the doll. And they have to choose between the bed or the chair. Put the doll on the bed. So now 2 words carry essential information for the child to understand. Therefore, this instruction is a 2 information carrying word instruction, or it has 2 key words the child has to understand. So child has to hear the instruction, see the objects and make a choice between the doll and the teddy and the bed and the chair. Please be careful when you are introducing new toys. Make sure the child has some experience of them, as they might not have played with or come across that object before. Make sure they have the vocabulary for this object or toy, i.e. they know what it's called. You can do this very simply by saying, give me the teddy, or show me the teddy. Give me the chair. If the child gives you the teddy or gives you the chair, you know that the child has the vocabulary for that object. With regards to where a child should be typically with information carrying words, we would expect a typically developing 2-year-old will be able to understand 2 information carrying word instructions. But again, be sure to be mindful of whether English is an additional language, as this may affect the child's vocabulary in English. And we also need to know whether there are any difficulties with their home language. Best practice would be to find opportunities to ask these instructions in the child's home language, so you have an idea of their ability. So far we've made it harder for the child. We've added more linguistic demands by adding more objects. So we added a teddy and we added a chair. But you can have other choices. And this is especially helpful if you're trying to teach a specific concept or broaden the child's vocabulary. At 2 information carrying words, it can be beneficial to include instructions that contain objects. So we've got the doll, teddy, maybe a car or a train. But you can also include verbs like run, hop, sleep, and you can also include possessions, hand, eyes, shoes. So you could ask the child to make the doll run, or you could ask the child to show you the doll's eyes. Moving on to 3 information carrying words. So now there are 3 choices: a doll or a pig, a teddy or a horse, and a chair or a bed. So now for the instruction, put the doll and the teddy on the bed. There are 3 words that carry essential information for the child to understand. So the instruction is a 3 information carrying word instruction. And we would expect a typically developing 3-year-old to be able to understand these instructions. The big difference in instructions we can give here is we can include basic concepts, such as size, colour and position. So we can use activities to both teach and reinforce concepts, and we can also then encourage the child to use the concept. So the instruction, put the small doll on the bed. You can see I've underlined small, doll and bed to highlight that those are the 3 key words. So they're the information carrying words. And then our 3 options are a big teddy, put them on the chair. If you wanted to teach the child different colours or find out if the child understands different colours, you could have different coloured objects. So you could have a red cat or a blue cat, or a red cat and a blue bird, and you're asking the child to put them on the bed. To teach the concept, ask the instruction and model the answer. So repeat this over and over, adding hand-over-hand support to allow the child to join in with you when you're giving the answer. So this means that you are sat with the child, you have the objects in front of you both, and you are asking the child to put the small doll on the bed. If you are teaching the child this concept, you might need to then show the child how to answer the instruction while you repeat the instruction. This is different to where you might be testing the child, where you're going to ask the instruction and wait for their response. When we talk about adding hand-over-hand support, what this means is you asking the instruction and then taking the child's hand and helping them to pick up the objects and move them according to the instruction. Asking the instruction, modelling the answer, adding hand over hand and repeating this over and over is the best way to teach children new concepts. Please be mindful that when you are repeating the instruction and you are doing the same activity over and over, you must put the toys or the pictures and the objects back into a neutral position between yourself and the child, i.e. if the instruction was put the doll on the bed and the child has completed that by putting the doll on the bed, you then need to move the doll back onto the table so that you can ask the instruction again for the child to complete. When you are first getting started with using this method, it is easier if you plan the instructions you're going to ask prior to the session. This way, you have an idea of what's coming up, you can be very clear with regards to what your goal is and what instructions you are wanting to ask, and you can make sure you have all the objects that you need. So this is the last example, and it's of a 4 information carrying word instruction. So here we have the same objects: a doll, a pig, a teddy, a horse, a chair and a bed. All of these objects are in front of the child, and we would ask them to put the doll on the bed and the teddy on the chair. So like all the other examples, you can see the 4 information carrying words are underlined. So these are your key words the child has to understand. Doll, bed, teddy, chair. I thought it would be helpful to give you an example of how I would record what we've asked the child and then the child's answers. So I've given you an example for every level here. So level 1. The objects you might have are a toy sheep, a dog and a trailer. And you might decide that your instruction you would like to ask is put the sheep in the trailer. You underline the key word or the information carrying word, so that's sheep. And then in our response box, when we've asked the instruction and the child has correctly responded, we are simply going to tick. When you come to have a look at this table, or however graph or Word document or notebook, however you're keeping your records, you'll know that the child was able to answer that level 1 information carrying word instruction. If the child is at level 2, the objects you might have are a pen, a paintbrush, a box and a bag. And the instruction might be put the paintbrush in the box. So you can see in the response that my child has a tick and a cross. So the tick correlates or corresponds to the first underlined word, so the paintbrush. So that tells me that the child correctly chose the paintbrush rather than the pen. And the cross corresponds to the second underlined word, box. So something went wrong with the box. So the child was able to identify the paintbrush, but something went wrong in the box. I've put further information where I've said the child picked up the paintbrush but didn't put it in the box. That might suggest the child doesn't understand the word box, so perhaps we might target developing vocabulary around that word for the next few days, and then we can try it again and see if that is where that's where the instruction broke down. Example for a 3 information carrying word instruction. We might have a big apple, a small apple, a bowl and a bag. And the instruction is put the big apple in the bowl. So here the child has to understand the word big, understand the word apple and understand the word bowl. So our response shows us that the first underlined word, which is big, the child got wrong, but the second 2 he got right. And my further kind of information shows that it was the small apple that he put in the bag, suggesting we need to do a little bit more work on the concept of big and small. Example for level 4, put the cow in the truck and the sheep in the trailer. So our response here, we've got a tick, a cross and 2 further ticks. So that tells me that the child understands the first instruction, which is cow. He didn't understand truck, but he did understand the 3rd and 4th word, sheep and trailer. Then if I look at the further information I've given, we've said the cow was put in the trailer. So again, that suggests that maybe the child doesn't have the experience of playing with a truck, doesn't know the word truck, and so we need to complete some activities, play with the child, bombard them, let them hear the word truck over and over to help them learn that word. So we're going to move on now and have a little think about how we can use information carrying words to promote expressive language. So far we've talked about how we can use it to help the child understand what we're asking of them and help them develop their vocabulary. But now let's just have a really quick think about how we can use it to promote expressive language. Firstly, why? Why would we use information carrying words to promote expressive language? Well, the technique is valuable because it's repetitive. The sentence structure remains constant, and you'll have seen that in the slides where we repeated put the doll on the bed, put the doll and the teddy on the bed. So it's quite repetitive and the structure is constant. So children with restricted sentence structures can practice this because they have a framework, and all they have to do is alter one or two words. Children will experience success and therefore enjoyment, which in turn impacts on a lot of areas, including enabling the child to experience better fluency due to a sense of achievement. For children with additional languages, these activities are very useful as the sentences are repetitive as well as reinforcing of vocabulary. We must, however, as always, be mindful of whether the child has an underlying difficulty with learning their home language. A child with difficulties learning their home language will have similar difficulties learning additional languages. As always, be aware of the child's ability in their home language and gear activities set in English at that same level. Research has also shown that using information carrying word games to promote expressive language has knock-on benefits of targeting the development of attention, concentration, turn-taking, and social skills. So how to get started? Some children will be able to follow your lead with giving the instruction. So they will pick up on the instructions that you're giving, and then when it's their turn to give instructions, they'll be able to follow that similar and consistent approach and structure. However, others might need more structure. For children that need more structure, we can use cue cards to give the child the ideas. So cue cards involve drawings or pictures of what the child is supposed to do or ask you. E.g., you show the child the picture. So the first example here is a horse in a trailer. You have the objects that you need in front of you. So you have a horse and you have a trailer and you have another option, perhaps a sheep. And the child can look at the cue card to get an idea of what they should ask. These cue cards act as a valuable bridge for the child who has difficulties thinking what to say. It also helps you better control what the child needs to ask, as you can target specific vocabulary that you'd like the child to start using. Cue cards are also great for feedback, as the child can show you their card after you have completed the instruction, and you can see if it's been completed correctly or not, and discuss this together.